Poke the Bear is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 268, presented by Prize Picks and Game Time Tickets. My name is Conor Ryan, and once again, we are joined by the esteemed Ty Anderson of 98.5 The Sports Hub and host of the Hockey Show. Ty, how you doing?
Good. It's actually funny. I'm hosting Saturday the 12th. It's the first show with me as a host. I'm getting all my my fundamentals down. It's kind of like training camp, so it's fun in that regard. So I'm super excited to get going, and I feel like we're gonna have a lot of fun this year.
Absolutely. Well, it's very well deserved. Congrats, Ty. Can't wait to listen to you every weekend breaking down the Bruins because thank God, Ty, we actually have legitimate hockey games to talk about. We're done with the 7-week preseason. That's what it feels like. We're done with the offseason that stretched for so long. We're able to break down what was the Bruins' first win of the season on Thursday, a 6-4 win over Montreal. It's one of those positive games from a writer's perspective where there's about 7 different topics you could kind of focus in on, whether it's Swayman returning, fourth line. A lot of guys stepped up further down the lineup for this team. What was kind of your big takeaway from how Thursday's game played out?
I think that the big takeaway for me is that you have a roster that when they're going and when you have more than one line going can really cause some problems for the opposition. I thought their puck possession game was really good. And now listen, like they caught Montreal in the second leg of a back-to-back, a traveling back-to-back at that. So maybe not the greatest judge of terms of opponent, but I thought we finally saw what this team can be like if they have what they want to have going offensively. We've talked about the bigger frames and the bigger bodies and the back end and what they can do there. You saw it last night. You saw that they were able to use their size and their reach to extend plays, to extend zone time, to keep the puck in the attacking zone. And then you had your first line and your fourth line going. And I think too many times a year ago, and even well before that, they were a one-line team. And when you're a one-line team, it's kind of hard if that line gets stymied or shut down, or it's a lot closer. But I felt like last night you had pretty much everybody going. I would say the exception of maybe 1 or 2 players. And I think they finished with 10 players, I think, had at least 1 point last night.
Yeah.
That's great. And that's sort of what they want to achieve. And, I know we're touching on a lot of topics here, but I think that begins with the back end. It begins with guys like Zadorov, McAvoy, Lindholm, who got his goal taken away, but still on the board, for a moment. It was started by those guys. So to have that come through after the ugly opening night, that was huge.
Yeah, and I think obviously we'll touch on the more negative aspects as this goes along, right? In terms of the D zone coverage, a few things like that. But I think when you break down that game and how it played out and who contributed, that was kind of I imagine Don Sweeney and his staff, the days leading up to free agency as they're mapping out who they want to target, what they want to augment this team into. They look at how they generated offense on Thursday as that's what they were mapping out as a scenario, right? Where you've got Elias Lindholm in the middle and he's got 4 points in 2 games. You've got, by that same token, how Jim Montgomery, I think, wants to build this team, where you look at, as you said, the D getting involved. You have McAvoy scoring goals in back-to-back games, gets a shot on goal 5 seconds into the power play and scores in Florida off of jumping up into the play. Zadorov has 2 assists. As you said, Lindholm gets a power play goal, gets taken off the board. I think you look at the guys they signed, whether it's Lindholm and Zadorov, how they can, add to this offense. And I think even though you haven't seen maybe the power play click in terms of, a lot of grade A looks down low, I think you're seeing how Lindholm is doing some of those little things at the bumper spot that is facilitating the puck play a little bit more down low. It's not been really, nearly as stagnant as it was last year, where it's all right, we're going to pass around a little bit. We know we're going to try to force it into Pastrnak, and it's going to get tipped. It's going to get knocked away. They're having more options, and I think there's been more creativity on the power play so far, and also just more of that shot first mentality. So whether you look at the D getting involved, you look at Lindholm and what he's provided, or even the fourth line, guys like, Cole Koepke, who, if you asked me at the start of training camp, like, oh, what's Cole Koepke going to do? I'm going to be like, depth Providence guy. Like, this guy that, hasn't really had a legitimate shot so far in his career. And I don't know how realistic it is, Ty, to expect a guy like Cole Koepke to be posting 3-point nights. But even when the pucks aren't bouncing your way and Mark Kastelik isn't, banking a puck off of Primo's shoulder or anything like that, that fourth line has been money so far. And that's, again, how the Bruins want to play. Like, those three guys are, can be physical players, but their motor is what's kind of driving the play on that. And I think when you look at it all, right, the size, the speed up front, the shot first mentality from the blue line, these are all things that the Bruins were lacking the last couple of years. And you look at other teams in the league that have been successful, they all kind of have those hallmarks, right? Like size on the blue line, speed up front, shot first mentality on the blue line. Like, they're at least through 2 games, they're adhering more to that, I think.
Oh, 100%. And, we look at where they are right now through 2 games. All their defensemen, with the exception of Mason Lohrei and Parker Wotherspoon, the 2 guys that we've seen, in and out of the lineup so far, have a point. And, a year ago, yeah, you had some guys get on the board. You had Shattenkirks and your Forberts and those types. But, like, this feels like they can consistently create offense from the back end, in my opinion. And I think it does come back to being shot ready, letting it sling, whether that's on the power play or, at 5-on-5. Like, we've talked about this before. A lot of goals nowadays are scored by just ugliness. Get it to the net, hope for chaos, bang away, and see what happens. That Cole Koepke goal wasn't created by a defenseman, but it's a second chance look. You just go back and bang away. And so I think that's kind of like, for as often as we're going to see Mark Kastelik, snipe top corner like he did the other night, like, we're going to see more of those ugly kind of goals. And so I think if you have a defense core that can get pucks on net and can get through traffic and is willing to get the pucks on net and take those shots, I think that's a huge factor. And I think you saw it. On Thursday night. I think you even saw it a little bit on Tuesday. It wasn't a great game by any stretch, but I felt like their defense was trying to make plays happen, sometimes to a detriment, but they were trying. And so I think they understand that, like, they're going to have to create offense from their back end. And I think right now, the most encouraging sign is that the players seem willing to take those chances as well.
Yeah, exactly. Like, even, there's the grade A looks where there's a shooting lane and you're taking it there. But, like, even look at Elias Lindholm's goal where Zadorov just seeing a bunch of bodies down low, putting the puck on net, and it tumbles and gets through. Like, again, not the flashiest play or anything like that, but it doesn't really matter if the puck's going into the net. And I think you saw, like, look at the last 2 years with Florida. Look at all these teams that go far in the playoffs are always in the mix. Like Carolina, where it feels like every single guy on their blue line is shot ready. And as much as you look at a guy like, Brendan Montour the last couple of years, and yeah, he's jumping up into the play and he can kind of catch goalies sleeping there. A lot of those chances and a lot of those plays from guys like him, Ekblad, Forsling, sometimes it's just getting pucks on net. And in the playoffs where ice is so limited, it's just a scrum down low and a puck sails through. And I think, it's good, I think, to see, new guys like Zadorov, who I think have had that approach so far of just getting pucks on net. It's not like it's a new guy in the system who's, playing his own game. And I think you hope that kind of rubs off on these other players. I mean, how often do you see Charlie McAvoy 5 seconds into a power play getting a shot on goal, and
right,
more or less scoring? So I think it's also important that it's happening now early on in this year where immediately you're getting returns. So sometimes, some of these defensemen aren't wired to do that. And all of a sudden, like, all right, sure. And then all of a sudden the puck gets blocked or it leads to a chance the other way. Like, they're already getting kind of rewarded right now for taking those opportunities. And you hope that just continues to build and build with this group, because when you look at, the losses up front for this team, and so far it's been good. Secondary scoring has been solid, but you're going to need your D-core over the span of a long year to, I think, supplement a lot of, either the goals or at the very least those grade A chances.
Yeah, and I think that, you sort of look at early season hockey, right? And it's not pretty. It's just not. we saw the Bruins and the Panthers on Tuesday night. On Wednesday night, I watched Calgary and Vancouver, and then the next morning, I rewatched Vegas and Colorado. And defensive coverage in all those games, I was like, woof, this is ugly.
Yep.
And I think that's sort of like, that's kind of how it is on the league. You look at Thursday night, Linus Ullmark stops 30 of 31. Ottawa beats Florida. Close game. Toronto and Montreal was 1-0 opening night. Like, those games are kind of rare this time of year. It's nice when you get them, but they're kind of rare because everybody is trying to like figure out what they are, who they are. And so like for the Bruins, for me, like I'm putting more focus on the fact that the offensive messaging to the defense is getting through. They're going to clean up their defensive game. Like, I just know that's going to happen. I've seen it. I know what they have core piece-wise, fundamentally, what they believe in as a team, as a franchise for that matter. So I feel like that's going to get fixed. I'm not worried about that. So to see the offensive risk-taking and the willingness to do the things that we're talking about, like, I put more stock in that than I do than their breakdowns right now, because I know, just again, based off how the early season goes, based off their coaching staff, I know they can fix those. But the offensive stuff, I was a little bit worried about that. I didn't know if, can you get Lindholm to be more of the guy he was 2 years ago? Can you get McAvoy to be a shot-ready power play quarterback? Like, those were questions that I legitimately had. And it's only 2 games, we all know. But right now, I think we're seeing that they will take some chances, they will make some plays, and they will score goals as a result.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it's kind of like the equivalent of like the first few weeks of the NFL season where teams are, only have so much time to practice, so many reps to earn, that the first couple of weeks are always kind of ugly, whether that's offensive execution, defensive execution. There's always one pot, I think, of any team's, especially strengths, that take a little while to get rolling here. So yes, the net front coverage and a few of these lapses have been concerning, especially in that Florida game, but I think all things considered, you feel better about that riding the ship. And if you can, as you said, shore up that part of your game, which you should, and then you keep on with that shot first mentality, you're not going to, I don't think we're going to be looking at this team and all of a sudden you got like 4 defensemen with 40 points or anything like that. That'd be great. But just having that mindset is going to lead to more grade A chances. And when you've got, this forward core where you have players like, Geeky in a top 6 role, Patra, ideally making his debut on Saturday, Frederic Brazeau. If you have guys that are either going to be around the net or trying to find some traction offensively, having your defenseman make it easier for guys in terms of generating those rebounds, those second chances, stuff like that, the overall domino effect is huge for this team. So yeah, again, the defense hasn't been that great early on, but it's kind of the same as like looking at Jeremy Swayman's performance. Like, was it his sharpest? No, but the defense in front of him was there. And also, like, guys had one full practice. Like, I don't think that people should be hitting the alarm yet in terms of either the goaltending or Swayman, or the defense, rather, right out of the gate.
100%. And I think that, when you analyze Swayman's game last night, I thought Jim Montgomery kind of said it best, where he said he made the saves that he should have made. Yeah. Right. And so you look at some of the breakdowns there, and I can't put too much fault on him. I wasn't looking at any of those goals going, "Ooh, you need the save there." There's maybe one that I was like, I'd like a stop there. I think it was that one right off the face-off where I was like, maybe he could have got that, but I think it was a deflection too. So it's like, all right, what are the actual expectations there on that save? But I think what's most important with Swayman is that it was 3-2 for a while there. It's about 16 minutes of that being a 1-goal game, and I thought he made some big stops during that 16-minute stretch there. He had that one where I think it was Beecher just made that brutal turnover, because I think he thought Lindholm had a stick and was calling for it, not that he's saying, I don't have a stick, send it. I think it was a complete screw-up in that regard. But Beecher sends it, it gets picked off, and it's a great glove chance for Montreal. And Swayman makes a glove save, beautiful save. He also makes that skate save, the left skate save on Kirby Dach.
Where McAvoy jettisoned the I lost my balance.
Yeah, that was Austin Powers. I fell over again. So that was I again, like, if you look at it in a vacuum, or if you look at it just box score, 20 of 24, you're like, oh, that's a bad night. But then you watch it, and you watch some of the saves he made when the game was still close. I think that's kind of, that's timely saves right there, right? And so to get those after having one practice and a morning skate, like, that's all right. I'll take it, honestly.
Yeah, the Bruins will definitely take that from Swayman, who should only get better with more reps moving forward. Ty, we'll cycle back to the fourth line, but before we do that, let's take a quick break here from my good friends over at Prize Picks.
Fall is finally here. You know what that means. Football season is back. And there's so many ways for you to get in on the action and win up to 100 times your cash on Prize Picks, as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level on the gridiron, ice, court, and much more. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off? Which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Every Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Prize Picks is also the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks makes sure that your picks are still live. There's really no shortage of ways to participate in Prize Picks, especially during football season. This week, I'm picking Justin Jefferson for more than 83.5 receiving yards and Patrick Mahomes for less than 267.5 passing yards. It's really that easy. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Now, let's get back to the show.
Once again, shout out to our good friends over at Prize Picks. All right, Ty, we touched on it earlier, but looking at that fourth line, I don't think anyone expected this team to be led by Cole Koepke with 3 points, a 2-goal game from Mark Kastelik, and 2 points in 2 games from Johnny Beecher. I think you look at just what that group has provided. This is a unit that going into training camp, I was like, oh, it's probably going to be like, Max Jones. And unfortunately, I think he's been kind of more banged up than anything, but it kind of reminds me of, if you're trying to build a pretty cohesive and strong fourth line unit, you kind of need like 4 or 5 guys in the mix, right? Like you look at 2018-19, it was, you had Wagner, Corrali, Achari, but also like Nordstrom played 60 games. Like you're going to need as many guys as you can. And if a guy, especially like Koepke, who, we knew Kastelik was going to be in the mix. We knew Beecher was going to be in the mix. If Koepke can continue to build off of this and run with what really is his first legit opportunity, like from coming from an organization like Tampa. He's been one of the guys that, you've mentioned it on this podcast before. It's been really good during preseason games, during camp, and it's translated right now. And it kind of feels like it all comes down to that motor, right?
Yeah. And sometimes opportunity is everything. This was a guy who put in his time in the AHL, talking to people over the summer. They were pretty quick to say like, hey, watch, he's like legit contender. And, you always hear that about guys, right? But then you kind of dug deeper and you saw what he could do. And, watching some of his Tampa clips, watching some of his clips for their AHL affiliate, you can see like, okay, he's a smart player. Like he's always got his head in the swivel. He's always in the play. There's continuous motion, right? Like there's not a lot of like standing and waiting for something to happen. Like, no, he's going out and he's making it happen. And so I like those kind of players. And yeah, to your point, you need 4 or 5 of those because of the way they play. When you play with reckless abandon, like those guys do, like you're going to get dinged up, you're going to get hurt. And so, but I think with Koepke, like we're seeing finally the translation of, okay, this is what made you a good player growing up. Now this is going to make you a good pro. And yes, it's only 2 games, but if you look at it, 30,000 feet above, like I thought he was one of their, if you were asking me to make it like a list of the top 3 players in the preseason, he would have made my list. Yeah. It's like, so it's just more than just 2 games. Like this has been a continuation. It's been a build. It's kind of like AJ Greer, a couple of years ago where it started off like in the preseason, you're like, maybe he can make it. And then by the 4th game, you're like, he's making it. Like they're gonna have to find room because this guy's making it. And, he might not be as electric as Greer in terms of the personality, what he says, how he amps up the crowd, all of that. But like, this is a guy who plays a game that I think is tailor-made for a fourth line, bottom six kind of role. Smart, good wheels, always in the right position, it feels like. So I've loved what he's been able to bring to that line so far.
Yeah, and I think that fourth line, like, we know it's going to be as advertised in terms of the physicality. I think Kastelik has provided that quite a bit. I think Ottawa fans were like, he's 6'4", 226, but he's not as physical as you guys might think. So far, maybe it's just putting on the Bruins sweater, and he's answered the call there, and maybe that makes him go sicko mode, but he's been good there. But I think just the speed is the thing that stands out, and it's, it's not, they're not reinventing the wheel, but you look at like the sequence leading up to Kastelik's first goal where Koepke drives towards the net, kind of creates like chaos there. And what happens, like the defensive structure kind of implodes a little bit. Guys are trying to regather, reset. And all of a sudden a little bit of soft ice is there and Kastelik, rips a shot. Like you look at like Beecher, who again had that miscue that Swim bailed him out on, but I think he's been really strong so far in terms of playing to his strengths, driving to the net. Like he's generated 2 goals, whether it's McAvoy's goal against Florida or obviously Koepke's off of just, we know his skating ability, but I think last year you'd see it, in transition a lot. You're seeing him now just drive towards the net, whether that's just another year of experience, added muscle, more stamina, something Montgomery mentioned today. He's a guy that I think, especially on a line like this, can be kind of the spark plug, right? Where if you got guys with a nose for the net like Kastelik and Koepke, having someone like Beecher who has those wheels to carry the puck in, to drive it down low, a lot of good can happen. So again, I'm not saying you're also going to have a fourth line with, 2 guys with 20 goals or something like that. It'd be great, but I think you're seeing just the way they play off each other. It's kind of, so far, it's like the ideal, I think, fourth line in today's NHL, right? Like, you got some size, but it also is where the strengths lie, I think, is in the pace, the speed, and those things, and the willingness, I think, to bring the pucks down low.
100%. And I think that you sort of look at what they can do, and like, I think you can go a lot of different ways with your fourth line, right? Like, you can have a speed line, you can have an offensive line, you can have a grind line. Like, what's kind of funny about this complexion is that I think they got a bit of everything here.
Yeah.
Like, you got 2 guys that can win faceoffs in Beecher and Kastelik. You have a smart player in Koepke, you have a smart player in Beecher. I think Kastelik's underrated too in terms of his smarts and his know-how. But you also have 2 guys, Johnny Beecher, that uses his speed to create turnovers, and he can use his speed to really lay some hits. Like, they're not going to be like bone, rattlers, but like, he can get in there.
He's a big boy.
Yeah, and Kastelik's a big guy too, and yeah, to your point, he's definitely used his physicality more in Boston than in Ottawa. Maybe that was something that they said to him, like, we think you can be this, so go out and be that. Maybe it's just by, you watch guys like Marchand, the way he was throwing the body around on Thursday night, and it's like, okay, I got to follow that. I got to follow his lead. But this line is kind of it has everything, right? And it's a bit different than a year ago. A year ago, they were very clear with what they wanted out of that fourth line. You had 2 speed guys, and then you had a hammer. Like, that's kind of how that line went, right? Like, this is more balanced, and I think it allows you to have, more balanced deployment in terms of how you utilize that kind of grouping, because you're not worried about, oh, geez, the face-off is in this end on that side. This sucks. Like, you don't really have that feeling with that grouping just based on their skill set right now.
Yeah. I feel like the Bruins, like the first day of camp, just brought in Cass. Like, they just made him watch the videos of like Patches O'Houlihan from Dodgeball. It's like, you gotta get angry. You're gonna get mean. They sent him out on Soldier Field Road, like running into traffic. They just did the whole routine for him. Which, if it leads Average Joe's to a title in Vegas, like, you hope you have, who knows what it could happen here. Like, it's a winning formula, if you ask me. And honestly, like, this is sort of what I think is interesting about the way they built this team, is that they built a team that should be, able to win games in a variety of ways. And I don't think they worry as much as they did a year ago, where, okay, like, the moon's got to be at this point in the sky, and we got to have this guy playing well. It's like, they don't really have that. They're like, let's just throw the puck out there. Let's play. We'll figure it out.
And so, you know, like they're gonna obviously there are some teams that we got to see how they fare against. Florida being the big one, obviously, but you know, I just think there's more cohesion, there's more balance, there's more. I don't look at this team like a team that has an identity crisis. Like I think they all know what they are, and they just got to go out and do it. And they're going to make some tweaks and some fixes along the way, but I think that they understand what they have to do to be the best version of themselves this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Shout out Patrick O'Houlihan. Ty, before we
good impression, I'm not gonna lie. That was a really good impression.
I was going between that or doing Zed from Men in Black, but
same actor, right?
It is, yes.
Yeah.
Shout out Rip Torn. I could also do the farmer from Men in Black, but I won't. People will immediately turn off the podcast.
I like saying, City Morg from Men in Black all the time, just out of nowhere. So I got that going for me.
Exactly. Ty, before we wrap this one up, let's take another quick break. Hear from our good friends over at Game Time Tickets.
Fall is beginning, which means football is back. Nothing beats a college football atmosphere. And with both college and NFL games, who doesn't love a good tailgate? Get to the game with Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. This fall, my friends and I are going to the Patriots-Titans game in Tennessee. And how will we get tickets for the game? Game Time, of course. The super deal has been amazing to us in the past, and there's no doubt it will be great to us again. I just love the curated deals, which make it easier to find the best price on great seats. Some other features I love are the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time Picks, curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, and theater. All-in pricing, toggling this feature shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. So, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Now, back to the show.
Shout out once again to our good friends over at Game Time Tickets. Ty, to wrap this one up, another guy who I think definitely stood out that I think probably the Bruins and fans expected was going to be an impact player out of the gate, Elias Lindholm. 4 points in 2 games, had a 3-point night on Thursday against Montreal. And I think probably the encouraging thing is that you look at kind of his cohesion with Zacha and Pastrnak so far. They're still, I don't think, fully on the same page yet. I think it's more of that's just reps and stuff like that. But there were a couple of passes where they were just off of being like really quality grade A looks, which if he's already contributing on the score sheet, he's already making, I think, some of those small nuanced plays that I think other guys on this team maybe can't do, or it's just not ingrained in them. I think so far, 2 games, as you said, he's been a really solid fit. And it's funny, people were like looking at the expectations for him. And they're like, he had 44 points last year. Like, what are we going to get? I thought if there was like an over under of like 65 points, like I think he's like a sure bet to hit over that off of just literally being on that power play and being next to Pastrnak at 5-on-5.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And you sort of look at what Pastrnak was able to do for guys like Eric Haula, Tyler Bertuzzi. Bertuzzi's a good player, but you know what I mean? Like elevating his talent pretty consistently, it felt like. Pavel Zacha obviously has had career years, back-to-back years playing with David Pastrnak. And so, yeah, like there's sort of you just play with that guy, you're going to get some secondary apples and some easy goals, deflections, whatever the case may be. But, I'm happy you brought it up, the power play. I feel like once they get going, like that's going to be a really impressive weapon for this team. You still have some guys that I don't think fully know their role on that power play or have fully, realize what they can and can't do. But like if you go back and you watch one of their first power plays of the year on Tuesday against Florida, teams have to respect Elias Lindholm in the bumper. Like they have to. And what happened there is that Marchand had all day. He walked within 7 feet of Bobrovsky and got a great shot on goal. Now, it didn't beat Bobrovsky, but it was a great shot. Like, when they get going, you have to respect at least three of the guys out there, right? Mm-hmm. And that's going to open things up because they only got 4, you got 5. And so I think that's really impressive, or it's going to be really impressive once it gets going and truly firing on all cylinders. With Lindholm, and I just feel like he can do things that Zacha couldn't do. It's not a knock on Zacha, but like sort of the little details, like, you know, the Bergeron-esque kind of like the senses of like, oh, I got to grind this guy down for 20 seconds to kill some clock and to get us in a, you know, to let us reload, whatever. Like, I just feel like he knows what he's got to do out there at all times. I think that's what's really, you know, that's what sticks out to me. But I agree with you that like the passing game, they're not there yet. They're getting there, but they're not there yet.
Yeah, it's even, I think, on that Pasternak goal, right, where I think Lindholm was the first guy in. I forget who he was kind of tied up with against the boards, but it was kind of that thing where he kind of processes right away, kind of pins the guy against the boards for 2-3 seconds, and, you know, kind of frees up the puck, then sends it down, and then Zacha gets it. Like those kind of little nuanced plays that obviously Lindholm gets the secondary assist from it, but it's not like when you're cutting that clip, it's usually you don't put a simple kind of board scrum into it, right? But that's something that he did that leads to positive gains. And yeah, as you said, like whether it's him on the power play, it does feel like that's a good fit. And I do kind of like how the power play so far, how it's looked in terms of, you know, and I think probably it's a byproduct of a guy like Lindholm there, but I think Marchand's had more of a shot first mentality, which is encouraging to see. You're seeing obviously the defense is getting more involved, and I think it's also an intriguing group because you also have guys on the second unit that I would also love to see with the first unit as the year goes on. Like already, it's like you look at, we mentioned like Lohrei is a guy that could be a fit when he gets back in the lineup and builds his game. There's a lot to like about what he could do there. You look at like at the net front, like if Justin Brazeau, who like seems like he like recovers every puck down low or always has the puck on his stick in that spot, like you have a lot of pieces that even if it might take some time to get it all cohesive, your power play is in a spot where again, is it going to go back to the Krug vintage days of a top 5 every year? But they can be a lot better than what they were last year, which for the last 2-3 months was pretty bad.
Yeah, they were really, you know, Jekyll and Hyde as a power play last year. And you sort of look at where they are right now. They're 22% so far, which is bottom half of the league. No, actually, no, top half's 13th. It's 13th real quick. But like they're getting chances. Like I think that's the biggest thing is that I no longer look at their power play and go, I'll do something else for 2 minutes because they're not going to score. Like, no, like it feels like it's back to being more of a weapon. And one thing with Lindholm that on the power play that I think is really interesting and can be interesting for them is that he plays the bumper here, but he has played on the half wall in Calgary and Vancouver. So he can do that. But that comfortability, you know, that versatility, that allows them to rotate more than they could, you know, in past iterations. You know, when Charlie Coyle was the bumper, it was kind of like that was his best spot. He could put him behind the net and win a battle. You know, like you can do what you want with him, but like that, like you have 5 guys now that in theory can rotate and can really put penalty killing units in a blender. And I think that's what's really impressive. Like everybody is capable of making plays from all over the ice, that 5-man unit, if it's Zacha out there with them. Because I like what Zacha can do in this role. I really do. I just feel like he's got to trust his shot because he's got an absolute cannon. And just from 2 games now, watching him playing with Lindholm, playing with Pasternak, playing on that top power play, he's going to get a lot of really, really, really good looks, and he's got to bury them, it feels like.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, a lot to like from Thursday's win over Montreal. Bruins will be back at it on Saturday against the Kings. Ty, where can we read your stuff? Where can we hear you on the airwaves, especially on Saturday?
Yeah, so now beginning Saturday, October 12th, you can hear me as the host of the 98.5 Sports Hub, the Shaws and Star Market hockey show, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. every Saturday. We're going to have the normal crew of guests. We're going to try to introduce some new ones along the way as well. But tomorrow's show, it's a weird show, right? Because we have a matinee game. So we have the matinee at 1. So it's not going to be myself, Ryan Johnston, and Bob Beers in studio. It's going to be me and Ryan. We're going to have Collins with Bob Beers and with Billy Jaffe as well. So full deck, but the matinee is throwing it off. So we're not going to have our full crew until I think week 3. So I'm going to need you guys, the audience, to be to call in. Give me your takes. Give me your thoughts. We'll talk about the team. Have a lot of fun along the way. Absolutely. And so, yeah, you can find me there and everywhere else for that matter. How about yourself?
Yeah, you can read my stuff over at Boston.com and the Boston Globe. I've covered every step of the way this season. And you can follow me on Twitter, X, whatever it's called, at Conor Ryan _93. Once again, this is episode 268 of Poke the Bear. You fans have a great rest of your week.